Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and watching to Retail Redeveloped. Today's episode is very, very special to me for two reasons. One, it's with Darryl Dewberry, good friend, mentor, absolute stud in the retail and real estate space in Charlotte, North Carolina. The second reason is today is Retail Redeveloped's 100th episode. Sounds crazy. Definitely never, ever imagined that I would do 100 of these things. Honestly, never imagined I would do 10 of these things. And I appreciate all the well-wishers, appreciate everybody that reaches out and says that they listen. Really means a lot. And thank you so much for listening. Darryl is the chairman and CEO of the Spectrum Companies, but that is doesn't do the amount of business and the amount of lives he's touched in Charlotte any justice whatsoever. He's been on the scene a long, long time. He's responsible for some of the most exciting and dynamic projects in Charlotte, including Vantage South End, which is being built in South End right now. Darryl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Adam, for having me. I don't know where all that just came from, but you tell a good lie. But make me feel old too, saying I've been around so long. But,
I didn't say too long. I didn't say we're ready to put you out to pasture yet. I just said you've been around the block a couple times.
Yeah, I got a little runway left.
Darryl, do me a favor. The intro that I gave you doesn't do any justice. Tell people just who you are, what Spectrum does, and just the why behind just this incredible business that you guys have been able to build.
Well, we've been in business since '82. I got there in '87. Ultimately bought out the founding partners. Steve McClure is my partner now, and what a wonderful guy. I can't say enough good things about him. We could spend 30 minutes talking about Steve. But we've been in the Southeast, been office, multifamily, mixed-use developers and acquirers, and built a nice little portfolio of about 5 million feet of office, several thousand apartment units, and having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys make it. Sometimes you make it look easy, which is
well. It might seem like that on the surface, but what we really focus on, which does sort of laser focuses in on is our mission, and our mission is to create places that make a difference in people's lives, whether it be an apartment project or an office project, and to have fun doing that, but really create projects with a soul, as opposed to just a project that somebody could either work or live in as a reason for being there. And that's what makes it fun. And the other thing that we have a good time doing, and what drives me, is really building and fostering teamwork with Steve and our team, and having people work together and really helping people win within our firm. That's fun.
That's great. So obviously this is an extremely retail focused podcast that I normally run, but with everything happening right now, I really thought it was important to take a little bit more of a macro view, which I know is something that you've always been a person I look to for kind of a macro view, and somebody that can kind of look around corners a little bit in the real estate world. Talk to me about kind of where you think we are right now. Obviously, we both have a tremendous amount invested in and around Uptown Charlotte, and it's a different place than today than it was 8 months ago. How do you see things coming back, just starting kind of on a really macro level, really high level? How do you see things coming back, and what should people expect as we get into a new year? Everybody's ready to leave this year behind us. What do you see happening next year?
Well, I think it's going to get a little worse before it gets better. Obviously, the vaccine getting into the market will provide people a lot of comfort once it starts being widely distributed. I think the world starts feeling better. The stock market obviously is seeing through this to next summer and pricing that in. So, we got the presidential inauguration, and we get that behind us and get some sensibility in DC. I think we're poised in the Southeast, and Charlotte being one of the cities we're in, to really do well. We're seeing a tremendous amount of in-migration of people, not just people moving here to be able to live here, but also jobs. And that's accelerating, not just in Charlotte, but Charlotte, Raleigh, Nashville, Charleston, those markets that we're in. So we're excited about the Southeast, excited about the markets we're in for the long term.
Yeah, it seems to me that obviously nobody's excited about what's going on, but it's pretty straightforward to see who could be the net winners out of all of this. Obviously, the Manhattans and the Bostons and the Chicagos and the San Franciscos of the world are all dealing with issues even on a more kind of magnified level than we are. And when you look at the Raleighs, the Charlottes, the Austins, the Nashvilles of the world, that secondary and tertiary level cities, seems like a pretty bright future just because of the migration patterns that are now getting accelerated.
I think it's right. I think this is just an acceleration of a pattern that was already started. And I think technology is now proven to be able to help these companies make decisions to be able to spread out a little bit more, decentralize or relocate. They don't have to be in Silicon Valley, for instance, and you've seen a lot about that. So, and I think, people continue to look for higher quality of life, lower cost, places they can grow and have families and that kind of thing. And Charlotte checks a lot of boxes.
So what are you hearing from kind of the large institutions and the large equity players about what people are forecasting out as we get the vaccine, as kind of the large mover type employers get past this? What are people saying that office needs are going to potentially look like? I mean, I've had some architects on here and everybody has a completely different answer to that question. I mean, what are you hearing on the street?
All right. Well, here's what we hear, and this is primarily from our larger corporate relationships. And, you have the JLLs and the CBs have a lot of these same relationships and more. But what we're hearing is, certainly you can't build culture long-term working remotely. And look at for instance, what B of A did in the 90s. They tried to send everybody out and give them a lot of flexibility, work from home, didn't have to come to the office, and it was a complete flop. And I think that's going to prove to be true for those companies who have sent people home forever. And what we're seeing, however, is we are seeing all size companies reassess their office needs to provide for more space per person. They may be working a little bit more with a little bit more of a flexible schedule. I would suspect that they will, where people are in, 2 to 4 days a week or 3 to 4 days a week, and then can be a little bit more flexible with time around that. And so long as you don't lose a lot of productivity, I think that can work long term. And I think job satisfaction will go up. You maintain your culture. You can build teams, you can mentor people, you can hire people, you can train people. And that's what we're seeing. We have one corporate client who just literally had about 30% more space than they were initially going to occupy. Now that they've occupied, they've spread everybody out. So they've actually taken all the space that they had leased, thinking when they leased it, they were going to have some to grow into. And now they're fully occupied with the same number of people. So I think ultimately in our markets, net, I believe it's going to drive demand. And to that point, we just decided, along with our partners at Invesco, to kick off the second building at Vantage, which, thankfully you're on our team helping us with the retail. We have 50-something thousand feet of retail there. We have 600,000 feet of office. The second building just got kicked off in the last few weeks, and it's totally speculative. So if you look at that in the context of, the country, Invesco has, $40 billion of AUM. This is the only office project that kicked off this year. Our steel fabricator is building this project for us on the steel part. That's the only office building they've done this year. So we have a lot of confidence in the demand drivers of Charlotte and being able to fill that building up. Obviously a big bet, but South End market's on fire. as you know, because you're involved. And we have tremendous momentum to fill up the rest of our first building, and then the second building is just getting into the market. So we're really excited.
Do you think that there will be in a city? Let's use Charlotte since we're talking about Charlotte now. Do you think there will be the potential for any decentralization? And South End is kind of its own beast. It's the prettiest girl at the dance. Everybody wants to be there from a retail standpoint, from an office standpoint. It's such a dynamic place that it almost sucks the wind out of the rest of Charlotte because it's so incredible. But let's take South End out of it and maybe think more about Uptown or maybe Raleigh's downtown that has had some momentum over the last half a decade. Do you think that there will be a pattern of decentralization where if people are working from home, you'll start to see more smaller office projects in the suburbs and new kind of boroughs popping up in the suburbs because there will be this further decentralization and people won't have that same, like, I've got to be in Uptown within a block of Trade and Tryon kind of mentality? Or do you think that this is more of just kind of a blip on the radar?
Well, we've already seen some of that in our markets. I can tell you from some relationships I have, for instance, in New York City, they're definitely seeing that. Where people are moving out of Manhattan and decentralizing. They might have 3 offices in various suburbs to be able to accommodate the employees that they have. But those employees are even, anxious to get back in. It's a little harder to manage and build culture when you're at multiple locations as opposed to one. But I think the reality is people are going to look at that as well as the spreading out where they are. The tenant demand that we have in South End, I know you said take South End out of it, but the tenant demand we have in South End, some of it is coming from downtown Charlotte where people are wanting to get out of, kind of the urban area. But I wouldn't bet against the CBD in Charlotte. I wouldn't bet against Manhattan long term. I mean, they're going to do fine. But there's a little bit of a shift in how certain tenants are looking at the markets. For instance, we've had a lot of interest in, frankly, signing leases with people coming out of some of the co-working locations because they want to spread out and get into more office space that they control. So it's just demand's coming from a lot of different places. And I think people are going to look at it differently and make some decisions that suit their particular company and their culture.
Well, talking about culture and co-working, I mean, obviously co-working was a huge part of a lot of office development strategies over the last 4 or 5 years. And you don't want to judge an industry based on a black swan event, right? Like, I mean, certainly we don't want to mothball co-working because of something that is affecting every industry.
Right. I mean, you can go back to the 9/11 attack. So by 9/12 at 5:00, everybody said that nobody would ever work in a high-rise in Manhattan. And frankly, people were talking about that in Charlotte because we were the largest banking center. So where's the next plane going? Are people going to move out of B of A's towers? Once we get the vaccine in the market and get widely distributed vaccine, get the virus under control, maybe it's next summer, fall, I think people will reasonably quickly put this in the rearview mirror. It's been tragic. There have been a lot of deaths. There'll be a lot more deaths. There are a lot of people sick. People, by now and by the time we finish, for sure, you'll know several people who've gotten ill at a minimum, and it's scary. But once we can take death off the table, I think the economy really opens back up, and we just got to get to that point. And the sooner the better, obviously. And I think we are poised to really do well as a country, in the Southeast particularly. Our inbound population growth rate is more than double the national average. More than double. Think about that.
What was it, like 100 people a day moving pre-COVID to Charlotte or something like that?
Depends on what metric you look at, but yeah. And that is amazing. So we're going to really, really do well. We just, we have really good public leadership. We have great private leadership in the companies we have here, as well as in Charlotte and Raleigh, and Charleston has some of the same. It's just, Nashville. So we're really poised in the Southeast to do extremely well. I'm excited about it.
So let's go back to something you mentioned that I think is lost in the kind of clickbaitish kind of conversations and headlines that are kind of permeating, every Business Weekly type publication, and that's culture. How big of a conversation is that behind closed doors in the conversations that you're having with leadership and with big leaders? I mean, do they see it as a kind of a critical issue that they're going to run into even in the next 6 to 12 months if they can't get people back at least in a semblance of one roof? I mean, are people considering that kind of we're heading in a bad direction and it's one of the first things we need to correct?
I think there's a lot of concern about culture. I don't think that's what I'm being told by the C-suites of companies I've talked to. That culture is the number one concern. Nobody did anything wrong here. There was no bad business decisions. There were people stealing money. This was the common enemy is the virus, and so people want to get back in the office. They want to be with their coworkers. They have they have a need to contribute, and business leaders are very, very concerned about continuing to build culture. And with culture now, you overlay the inclusion and diversity initiatives, and that is all wrapped up in kind of one area. And we need to get back in the office in order to build those things back up. I mean, we're a small company. We're just over 100 people, and I think about how difficult it is to maintain or try to maintain culture within our ranks. And it's just hard. And I miss people, and people miss being there. But we need to do what we can to try to get this virus in the rearview mirror, and that is protecting ourselves, our associates, our partners, and our families. And so we're all doing the right things. We just need to get to the other side of this.
Darryl, what would you tell someone that is just getting into the business right now? I think back to when I was first trying to get my feet under me before the financial crash, and something like this happens, and you don't have the benefit of experience, so you can't look past and know that the sky is going to turn blue again, and the birds are going to start chirping again. What would you tell someone? Maybe one of your young associates, or just somebody that wants to get into business and is potentially going to get scared off because of what they're seeing right now. What would you tell a young person right now?
I'd say you just gotta be patient, be diligent, continue to reach out to people, and it's just going to take a little bit longer. It acts like right now, we're in a recession and trying to get a job in a recession. Our youngest is graduating in May, and we've had these conversations. And then we have two others who have one of their jobs was relocated to a city that she wanted to go to. The other one's job was eliminated. So we have experienced in our family some of the difficulties that go along this. So you just have to get back out there, dust yourself off, be patient, work a plan, make connections, and just be diligent. It's just going to take longer, but if you stick it out, winners will win. So that's the way we've always looked at it, and I think then it'll be the same this time.
I'm gonna get you with one last question, then I'm gonna let you go. Thank you again for taking time to share your experience with the listeners and the viewers. I just read a McKinsey report that states that 80% of people questioned reported that they enjoy working from home. 41% even claim that they're more productive, even though you could certainly argue that both ways. What do you think will be backlash from employers, especially large scale employers, when they say like, "Hey guys, it's time to get back to work. We're going to start you 2 days a week, but we're going to get you up to 4 or 5 in the next 12 to 18 months." What kind of backlash do you foresee happening, and how will somebody like you deal with culture and morale when some people are they like being able to walk the dog on a conference call? How do you think people should deal with that?
Well, when you say should, I can tell you what we're thinking about and what a lot of the larger employers are thinking about. The what we're thinking about is more flexibility, give people the ability to, take their kid to childcare, a couple of days a week, if that's what he or she wants to do before they come to the office, as opposed to, assigning that to someone else. Give them the ability to walk the dog on the Monday morning calls, which we have a lot of. And that's going to be perfectly normal going forward. With their baseball hat on, they're walking their dog, or they're going on a walk themselves and giving their Monday morning reports on the Zoom call, as opposed to being in a staff meeting in the conference room, which is, the way things were done in the past. So I think there's going to be sort of a blended approach in the very near term. What the big corporates, and frankly, I get it, what they're concerned about. They haven't called a lot of people back in the office, maybe some critical people, but they're concerned about the lawsuits, being sued for coercing people to come in, and somebody gets sick and they blame it on having to come in. And they don't want that. They don't want them to get sick, but they certainly don't want to be sued for asking them to come back in. So it's going to be a gradual, it's going to be an evolution of processes and policies. And so we'll see how it comes together. But I believe flexibility in work schedule is going to overcome a lot of the objection to coming in.
That's awesome. Well, Darryl, once again, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom with the listeners. Always fun to bend your ear for a few minutes, and I can always count on you to give me some honest feedback on whatever issues I'm dealing with. So it means a lot, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, and very much appreciate our relationship. Like you said, we do business together, but we're also friends, and you're very interesting to talk to. So thanks.